after that 1-year internship, there's going to be something that you might have to do called the postdoc. Now, here in the United States, there are only a few states that don't require a postdoc, but for the most part, every state does require a postdoc. And what a postdoc is that at this point, you have finished everything pertaining your graduate school program in terms of your courses, in terms of getting your clinical experience and going through your practicum settings, but now you are really actually getting ready for licensure. What is up, fam? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Phil Sarpon. This is Phil's Guide to PsyD. This channel is dedicated to all things psychology, wellness, and graduate school. Today, the question is going to be, what is a postdoc pertaining clinical psychology? Now, if you guys are looking to get into clinical psychology, basically a quick overview is basically what you have to do is you have to get a bachelor's, and then you might have to go into a master's program, and then you have about 4 to 6 years of a PhD or a PsyD. Now, after graduate school, there's something called the internship, which is usually 1-year internship that you are basically practicing under supervision under a psychologist. After that 1-year internship, there's going to be something that you might have to do called the postdoc. Now, here in the United States, there are only a few states that don't require a postdoc, but for the most part, every state does require a postdoc. And what a postdoc is that at this point, you have finished everything pertaining your graduate school program in terms of your courses, in terms of getting your clinical experience and going through your practicum settings, but now you are really actually getting ready for licensure. And the process for every state is a little bit different, but every state does require a certain number of hours that pertain to clinical hours as well as supervision hours. And so usually what a postdoc is that you are a practicing psychologist. You can actually call yourself a doctor of psychology, and what you're going to be doing in your postdoc is basically obtaining your hours so that you can be ready for licensure. Now, a lot of times what people will do is that as they're going through their internship, they'll be basically preparing for their licensure exam. The licensure exam is the EPPP. And after they pass their licensure exam, they may have to fulfill a number of different hours in order to actually get their license in the state that they are in. So that is a little bit of the process of a postdoc. It's essentially a residency in which a psychologist is working under supervision underneath a psychologist, really pretty much getting their hours ready to go, either preparing for their licensure exam or really just getting ready to actually become an independent psychologist. What's interesting is that there's a number of different clinical psychology specialties that have specific numbers of years when it comes to the postdoc. For most specialties, for example, if you want to specialize in health psychology or primary care psychology or another form of psychology, usually it's recommended that you do a 1-year postdoc that you can really specialize and get that experience. But there are other specialties that require more years of postdoc. And for neuropsychology, if you're interested in becoming a neuropsychologist, usually those postdocs are about 2 years after your internship. So usually that postdoc process is a little bit longer than the other clinical psychology specialties. So that's something to keep aware, in that you're not just going to go through graduate school, you're not just going to go through the internship, but you most likely will have to go through at least a 2-year postdoc before you can become an independent neuropsychologist and start getting ready for your board certification. Now, here's an interesting question, and the question is, do you absolutely need a postdoc? Well, there are certain situations that you may actually be able to get out of a postdoc. Now, as I mentioned before, there are certain states that don't require a postdoc at all. So once you finish your internship, you can become licensed right away after you take your EPPP. But for the states that do require a postdoc, you may actually be able to get a postdoc underneath a staff psychologist position. And so essentially what you can do is that you can apply for a clinical health position at a hospital or any other mental health community center, and you're going to apply for any other job that a psychologist would apply for. Once you get that job, you might have a series of months to maybe a year to actually get your licensure. And once you have your licensure, you can fulfill all of your postdoc hours underneath that supervision in terms of that facility, right? So you don't necessarily have to go into a postdoc position. You could get your postdoc hours by just fulfilling a staff position somewhere else. And a lot of times what people will do is that because postdocs don't pay as much as a typical staff psychologist, people will just become a staff psychologist, and then they can get their postdoc hours through that position if that position is willing to do so in terms of getting those supervision hours to that psychologist. The time that a postdoc really becomes necessary is when you're trying to specialize in something like neuropsychology or health psychology or any other type of specialty type of field. If you just want to be a general clinical psychologist, you may be able to skirt your way around actually having to fulfill that postdoc and just get a staff position as a psychologist and get your postdoc hours underneath that position while getting paid a lot more. All right, so let's go ahead and go real quick into a summary of why you might be able to want to get a postdoc. Number one is that you want to get more experience, maybe more clinical hours, maybe more supervision hours, maybe more research hours, or number two, you may want to specialize in a specific type of specialty in clinical psychology. Specializing in a postdoc can actually make your life a lot easier when you start applying for board certification, because they'll see that you've done that extra level of training that is really specialized and focused into that specialty. The third reason is that typically most states are going to require a postdoc anyways, and typically for most psychologists, they're going to have to fulfill some type of hours. The reasons that you may not need a postdoc is if you live in one of those states that don't require one, or you don't want to specialize in any type of clinical psychology specialty, or you actually may just want to get a full-time paid staff position, get paid a lot faster, because postdocs tend to make a little bit less money than actual licensed psychologists who are working full-time. So maybe you, from the internship, you actually want to actually make more money right after the internship, and so you want to skip that process of a postdoc. If that is the case, then there are certain positions that will allow you to actually hire you as a full-time paid staff position as a psychologist, but you can get those postdoc hours through that position. All right, so hopefully all of that makes sense in terms of what a postdoc is, if you're going to need one in the future, and if so, maybe some of the steps that you need to think about if you're going to do so. It's always recommended to talk to a supervisor or talk to a licensed psychologist to figure out what exactly your goals may be and how to actually get there in terms of the steps you need to take. All right, guys, so that is the video. That is the postdoc video. Hopefully I was able to answer some of those questions that you guys have. If you guys have any more questions, I'll make sure to take a look at those comments. And if you have not already, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and I will see you guys in the next video.